guys, I'm down on the allotment and it is time to direct sow some spring flowers. Let's go. For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Peggy and I'm growing a cut flower garden here on my allotment in Kanagawa Prefecture, Japan, which is just south of Tokyo in USDA Zone 9B. Thanks for checking out my channel. Okay, so last week I started my spring planting with bulbs. I planted in freesia, hyacinth, muscari, some daffodil, some bluebell, and it was only a week ago, but they have already started to come up. These are my freesia that are coming. I have my first hyacinth sneaking up through the leaves, and more of my mystery bulbs, which wasn't surprising because these guys were starting to come up through the bulbs when they were still in the box. As well as that though, I also planted out some seeds. I got my sweet pea in. I always feel like I'm too late getting my sweet pea in compared to the other people in the allotments here. So I got them in, and I also planted some crimson clover, and just a week and they have already germinated. This is all crimson clover. And right next to them, you can see my first sweet pea coming. There's a sweet pea there. There's another one coming along here. As well as this sweet pea and crimson clover, I also put in some new Rudbeckia, Echinacea and scabious seed. Now these are all perennials, but they're a short-lived perennial, which means they kind of come up well for 2 to 3 years and then they start dying back. So it's good to just put down a few more seeds every year to make sure that you have a continuing number of really nice blooms. So I've reseeded them. I can't really see if they're coming through yet, but the seed's down, so hopefully that means that these, although they're perennials, the old ones will come back, but I'll start to get newer, fresher ones coming through as well, just to make sure that I always have flowers in the garden. Now the weather has definitely cooled down here a lot, which is really nice, but we are still quite warm. There's also been a load of rain this week and we're scheduled more for next week, so it's really been perfect weather for these seeds to germinate quickly. And because of that, I'm going to go ahead and put more in the ground. So today I am planting out some cornflower mixes, some nigella, I have some echinopops, those little purple drumstick things. I have my poppy because I loved them last year, so I have 3 types of poppy again. I've got my Iceland poppy, my raspberry ripple poppy, and the amazing grey, which were my favourites from last year. So I've got those to go in. I'm planting in some dill because that was a really nice early spring filler for me last year. So I want to get more of that in the ground now. And I've also got some bronze fennel, which was recommended to me. So I'm looking forward to see how that does as well. The next ones don't have pictures, sorry, but this is Viola, and I'm really excited about this one because it's my experiment for this year to see if I can get this growing on really nice long stems. I also have some delphinium, which doesn't have a picture, and it's a really beautiful kind of lavender delphinium that I have. So we are going to get all of these in the ground. I forgot my lunaria. I had to search so hard for this, but I really wanted it. My grandfather always grew this. Also known as honesty, perennial honesty, or money plant. I love it. I made a bouquet for my sister's wedding in the summer and it had some of this in, and it was still a kind of beautiful greeny purple color, and then you can dry it and peel off the top leaves and it leaves the beautiful kind of transparent seed pod. So I really wanted this in my garden, but it's so hard to find this seed. It really took me a long time and I had to pay a lot more than I wanted to for it. So I'm very excited to get some of this in the garden. The mozzies are going mad because it's about to rain again. Okay, I'm gonna start up the top here with my Viola. Now, I love Viola. The purple pansies were my grandmother's favourite flower. I kind of got a grandparent thing going on in the garden today. But purple pansies were my grandmother's favourite, and so I like to have them in my garden to remind me of her. What's the difference between a pansy and a Viola? Technically it's something to do with the petals. They both have 5 petals, but one of them has 2 petals at the top and 3 underneath, and the other has 3 at the top and 2 facing down. Don't remember which one's which. Pansies tend to be bigger. They're kind of the more big flat-faced ones that you get in the really nice, now you get the yellow ones and the kind of the yellow and blacks and the purples and oranges. They're kind of the bigger, flatter ones, whereas Viola are slightly smaller, but they do flower more. Now, how many petals they have is technically how you identify them, but now there are so many new breeds of these coming out. Like the ones I have are the super ruffly ones. It's kind of hard to see where the petals are and how they are, so there's not that much different. I wanted the big ruffly ones and I found these ones in the beautiful colouring that I thought would really match the lavender delphinium and the nimbus sweet pea that I've got in. So they're all going to hopefully come up around the same time and be that kind of misty purpley color. So I went with the Viola. Also, the Viola tend to flower for longer and more proficiently than the pansies do. So that's what I've gone with. Now, usually these are used as a bedding plant. You put them down in spring, they come up, they fill up, and as soon as it gets hot, they die back, and you rip them out and put something else in. They're not known for being cutting flowers because they don't really grow on a long stem. But now more and more people have found that you can actually force them to grow onto a long stem. The trick is to plant them really close together. To put them in early, these guys need a long growing period to get the length on them. So I'm putting them in now. They'll sit here over winter, and hopefully I can get some height on them before the spring comes and kills them off with the heat. But yeah, you really want to have them close together so that they're competing. When they're competing for space, they're going to push up towards the light and get taller and taller and taller. When it does start to get a bit hotter, I am going to be putting a shade cloth over them just to try and keep them cooler for that little bit longer, to try and give them as long as possible to get on the nice big long stems. So I'm going to put them right here at the front, and that leaves room for then my ranunculus and anemone are going to go beside them, and hopefully this will be a beautiful bed come spring. Can you even see those? These are tiny seeds, and there's not very many in a packet. Now I'm going to be planting these about 7 centimeters apart, about 3 inches apart, because I want them to be close together, and I'll put them in little clusters of a few seeds per hole. But yeah, there's not really very many in there, so I might have to see how these germinate and put in a second batch later if they don't do as well as I want them to. So the seeds are tiny, which means they don't need to be very deep. I've literally just run the side of my trowel along here to make a small indent, and I'm going to put them in along there. However, these are really, really heavy feeders. So I have got here some, these are worm casting pellets. And I'm going to sprinkle some of these along here, and then once these have germinated, so these will mix in with the soil as I plant them, and then once these have germinated and start to come up, I will be feeding them quite regularly, just to try and get as much growth on them as possible, because they really do like to be fed. Okay, so they just mix in with the soil, and as it rains, these will release into the soil and give them some, the seeds some food to start with. And then I will be feeding them. I use homemade compost tea, where I have a bucket that I fill with water. I let the water stand for 24 hours. Then I put in a small bag with some really high quality organic compost in it, and I put in a fish tank bubbler just to make sure there's air going in it. I let it bubble for 24 hours. I actually put a little bit of these in as well, so that these dissolve into it and add a little bit more nutrition to that water. And then as soon as that is ready, I come down and I spray it on the soil, and also I spray it on the leaves and the flowers. It helps with powdery mildew and keeping a lot of bugs and things at bay, but also it's really good for your soil health as well. So once these germinate, I'll be putting this and the compost tea on as well. There are so few seeds in that packet, so I think I'm only going to get one row. That just filled one row. But Viola experiment started. Okay, so now I'm in the next row along, and this is where I'm going to be putting a lot of my bigger, taller, fluffier flowers. So I have my cornflower, I've got nigella, I've got my poppy, and then I'll be putting in my cosmos and my snapdragon in this one as well. So it's going to be quite a tall row. Last year I grew the black ball cornflower, which you can see here, this dark one, and I really, really loved it, and it went so well with a lot of my darker spring tulip, and it's just kind of more my colours. This time I've just got a mix. It kind of matches my scabious. You know, I quite like this lavender one. I think that'll go nice. This looks a bit different on the camera, but this is kind of a softer pink one. That one might be nice. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with the others, but I got a cornflower mix just to see what I could get. I really liked the black ball cornflower, but I did find that once we were getting towards the end of spring, it was just getting so big and so unruly and so hard to cut from that I should have just taken it out earlier. And I think that might be what I do. I might then sow another succession and see if I can get an autumn sowing on it, because I don't have anything else, do I? Oh no, I'm going to put amaranth in here afterwards, so that's fine. This will be in for spring, and then I'll pull it up and I'll put my amaranth, and I think my bergamot is going in here as well. But I thought that would be a nice spring mix. Then I have nigella. Now again, it's just a nigella mix. Same kind of colors, pink, purples, whites. This one also, however, makes the nice seed heads. Don't know if you can see that kind of nice stripy red seed head. So if I miss some of these, that's okay. I haven't had much luck with nigella. I tried growing it twice in my last garden. The first time it didn't do anything. The second time it came up and it was really, really tiny and didn't do much. And I know that it should be a lot bigger. So I'm hoping that because this is nicer soil and I have access to water, that this should come up nicer for me this year. So this is one that's failed in the past, but I'm really trying again. Look at all the different seeds in there. Looks like trail mix. There's lots of my nigella seed in here, but I'm loath to give it a lot of space in the room because it hasn't done well for me in the past, and I don't want to be wasting space. So I think I might just put in 2 rows and see how it goes. So next I'm going to put in my poppy. Now I absolutely loved my poppy in my garden last year. The first year I grew poppy, I grew the California jelly bean series, and I didn't like them at all. They weren't tall, the flowers weren't particularly interesting, I didn't like the colours of them very much. Last year I grew a huge variety and kind of picked my top 3, which is what I'm going to put in again this time. I have the Icelands. Now these aren't the best colours, you know, they're kind of that bright orange and the bright yellowish. I could have got some nicer ones, but this was all I could really find. So I'm going to put these in because these were nice and tall ones, and I want to try them again because these guys got crowded out. The problem with my poppy last year was that I did not give them enough space at all. And this time I'm going to give them a lot more space. I'm going to put a lot more in, give them more space, and also give them a lot more support. I didn't realize how tall they were going to grow because the California jelly bean ones only ever grew to be about 45-50 centimeters tall. These guys were well over a meter, so they needed a lot more support. So I'm going to try these ones again and hope that they don't get as crowded out, and maybe they can do a bit better for me this year. Then I have the raspberry ripple, which I absolutely loved, and I've got some of the pearl grey series, which were such beautiful colours. I absolutely loved them. I know that my colour palette isn't to everyone's taste. I've got a lot of the kind of darker and more kind of dusty coloured flowers, but I grow them for my house, so it makes sense that I grow what I like. So I'm going to put these ones in again, but I'm going to give them a lot more space, and I will be putting support netting up really quickly on these ones. Not today, but as soon as they start to germinate and get some height on them, I'll be netting these. One thing I did find with poppy is that they prefer to be planted in clumps. I don't like to thin them out so that there's one plant every, I don't know, 10 centimeters. These guys like to be in little clumps, so that's how I plant the seed. Okay, so that's my poppy in. Now poppy get a bit of a bad rep as a cut flower because they die. People think they die very quickly. And they kind of do, I get where that comes from, but I actually did an experiment last year with this. I did a poppy vase life experiment for a few of the different varieties, and some of them lasted less than a day, but others really, really surprised me and were lasting well over a week in the vase and still looking great, and they weren't just falling apart you know, the way that a rose does quite often. They just all drop their petals at once. So I was really surprised with how well they did in the vase. I'll do a link to that video below if you want to watch it, because it did have a lot to do with how I was processing them post-harvest. So once you've harvested them, there are a few things that you can do to help them stay much longer in the vase. But I'm really happy I've got those in because they were definitely my favourites from last year. So this space between my dahlia and my straw flower and then my chrysanthemum was where I was going to put my snapdragon, but it ended up being much too small. I have a lot more dahlia than I thought I would. Incidentally, my dahlia is doing really well and doing exactly what I wanted, and is starting to come back for me. Now I'm not sure if I'm actually going to get any flowers off of these before the cold comes, but we don't really get coldness until the end of December, January, so there's a chance I might still get something off of these. But I do still need to dig them up and divide them, and this is how much room they're taking up before I've divided them. And the clumps were huge. If you go back and watch the transplanting video where I actually dug these up from the old allotment, you can see they're absolutely massive. So I've got no idea where I'm going to put all of those dahlia tuber, because I really can't give them any more room in this garden. So I might just have to be giving them away to random people. But that's meant that I didn't have enough room here for my snap tracking. So instead I've decided to put my echinops. I keep calling them echinopops because they look like little lollipops, but they're not, they're echinops. Yeah, that's what I'm going to call them. I am going to put these and my lunaria in here. Now, instead of planting these guys this way, I'm actually going to do the echinops at the back and then the lunaria at the front. I know that these guys grow to be about 1 meter. I'm not really sure about the first year. Now, I'm not even sure how well these are going to grow for me in the first year. This is a perennial, the lunaria. So it might stay quite small the first year and then really come up for me the second year. I'm really not entirely sure what's going to happen with these. So I'm going to leave them at the front here. So if these guys grow really big, then these should still have a little bit of space at the front to stay shorter and not just get completely swallowed up by the others. So I'm not going to put a lot of these in. I don't have many seeds in this packet. I'm just going to put in 5 little patches here. It's the first time I've grown it. I'm not sure how it's going to go. And then I'll try and plant some of my lunaria. Now, like I say, these seeds were really, really expensive, so I'm not going to put them all in. I am going to save some back for the spring in case these do get killed off by the cold or they just don't like being put in this early, and then I can start some more in the spring. They probably won't provide anything for me next year, but the year after it would. So yeah, that's my plan. Now I've got a little bit of my gran and Papa in the garden. Papa was a great gardener. This was the first garden I remember playing in. It was a garden in Glasgow. There used to be foxes up the back, which I always thought was so wild. But yeah, he always had this, and my family at home still had the seed from his plants, and they all grow it in their garden. So help me out, Papa. Let's see if we can get it growing over here. So right now the garden is really, really flower heavy. And you know, I'm growing cut flowers, so it makes sense that I have a lot of flowers. Some things like the nigella and the cornflower are going to be more kind of filler flowers. I've also still got my yarrow or achillea in from last year, but I actually really like more greenery heavy bouquets. I like a kind of more foresty look, I guess. But I've never really had the room in a garden to grow a lot of greenery, a lot of foliage. This garden is slightly bigger, and I am trying to take advantage of that by growing things that I've not grown before that hopefully will give me more of that kind of flowy wild look that I like to have in a bouquet. So this last row, I'm planning on putting in a lot. I have clary sage, I have cerinthe, I have pink pokers, I have some purple ornamental basil, I have some gomphrena, I have something that I'm calling pink fluff, because that's what it looks like. It's a type of grass that kind of comes up pink and fluffy. I want to try some more ami. I accidentally had some ami that had seeded itself in the garden just the summer past, and I really, really liked it, but when I went away it flowered the most, and then when I came back it had all gone already, so I really want to get some more ami in. I grew dill last year in my garden, and I really liked that. It came up so early in the spring and was really something that I could use when there was no other filler around. And I've got my fennel, and I want that all to go in this last row, which is a big ask because I also have my gladiola here. This is where I'm going to be putting my tulip, and I ordered too many tulips. I thought when I did my spring bulb haul that was everything that had come, and then this week every day a few more bulbs have arrived, so I've actually ended up with some really beautiful but more tulip than I expected. So I'm hoping I can put them all in here. Tulip go in quite close together. I do not pull up my tulip bulbs when I harvest. I know that's what flower farmers do to get the longest stems on, but because I'm just arranging for me, I don't need to do that, and bulbs are expensive, so I want them to come back for me every year. So they can't go super close together, but they can go close enough that I'm hoping I can get them all in here where my gladiola are. So my tulip will come up, and as they start to die down, my gladiola will come up. But that doesn't leave me very much room. And as well as all these, I want to put my delphinium in here as well. Now, I'm not a huge fan of delphinium. They grow really tall, and that, you know, for mostly when you're growing cut flowers, you want things on really long stems, but I find that delphinium grows so tall that other than putting them in a huge big vase by themselves, there's very little I can do to arrange with them. And they tend to be a kind of blue color, and blue's not my favorite color. It's just been a color that I don't really like. But I am leaning into the purples this year, and I managed to find this delphinium, which is called Misty Lavender. That took me a while, sorry. Here, so this is Misty Lavender delphinium, which is such a beautiful color. So there aren't very many seeds in here. Delphinium is a perennial though, so, and it grows really tall. So I'm gonna put it in here because the dill will also get quite tall, the ami gets quite tall, so this is going to be quite a big bushy area. But I'm just a bit worried that I'm trying to get too much into this space and I'm going to run out and have to lose things. But it's not going to be my delphinium or my dill or fennel, so I'll get them in today. Even the seed of the dill smells really nice, and you get so much seed in this. Now, when I planted this last year, I planted it at my house in a container, and it was a container about this size, and I got quite a lot, but once the flowers came up and I cut them, it took a while for them to come back again, and then it kind of got crispy and dried off. So I'm actually going to do a second planting of these in spring. I'll plant these ones now, then I'll cut them and then replant as I cut. So it's good that there's so much seed in this packet, because I'm going to have to buy any more. Last is my bronze fennel. I've not grown this before, but it looks absolutely beautiful. I think it is a shorter one though. Let's see how many seeds are in here. No, I've lost my scissors. There are not very many seeds in here, so I think I'm only going to get 2 rows and I'll only get 1 planting of it. I don't know if this also smells good or if my hands just still smell nice from the dill. Team, we are so on it. This garden is looking stocked. I'm so excited. The rest of that row I can't plant until spring. The Cerinthe, the Ami, the Opal Basil, all of that needs to be spring planted. So I'll start that around March, April time, depending on how our winter is this year. I am going to be starting some of my spring stuff at home. I will be starting my stock and my snapdragon. I think that's basically it. I do have quite, I think I've got 4 or 5 different types of stock, and I'm growing the stock quartet series this time. I had some of them last year and I was getting like 3 stems, that's the word I was looking for, 3 stems of stock per plant instead of just your single one, and I was loving that. The second and third ones were much smaller, but they were still fine for using in the kind of arranging that I do. So I'm going to see if I can get those growing a bit taller for me this year as well. So I will be starting my stock and my snapdragon at home and then transplanting them in. Now last year I did that really early, I did it in January, and I'll be doing the same this year. I will be again putting low tunnels and frost cloths over them though, but they liked being in, they like the cold. So once I have them established and growing, I will be putting them in the garden. I'm going to try a small experiment this year with my cosmos. I've tried cosmos a few times and I've had mixed results because it gets so hot here so quickly in the spring that they come up, I get a little bit, and then it all goes crispy and dies. So this time I'm not going to start it at home. I'm going to wait until there have been a few frosts, and then I'm going to put it in the garden really early. December, possibly January is when we start to get our frosts. If I put it in now, then it would germinate in this nice weather and then it would just die in the cold. But if I put it out in the cold, it'll actually hold the seed, and then as soon as the soil gets warm enough, it'll germinate and start to grow for me. And I'm hoping that'll give me a really, really early start on my cosmos. I'm then going to do a second sowing because I'm seeing now people have a beautiful cosmos coming up now that the weather is cooling down again. So I will then do an end of summer sowing to try and get a nice autumn burst of cosmos as well, because really the summer here is so hot. I've just got to admit there's very little I can grow at that time. So that's going to be an experiment with my cosmos this time, is to direct seed it in the winter when it is still cold, and see if I can get that for a really early crop of cosmos. And then zinnia obviously is going to be summer. but I don't really have much after that. I'm going to be pulling out some of my early spring stuff to plant in some amaranth, some bergamot. I've got some African marigold that I want to be putting in, to be coming in this time next year, so kind of end of the season into autumn time next year. But for now, it's pretty much all I can do in the garden. I feel like before I was growing flowers to see if I could grow them, what I liked, and this is the first year that I've really kind of been able to put together my own color palette and say, well, yes, I like them, but I don't like them in this color and that color and that color, and I've been a bit more picky about what I'm putting in. So I'm going to be really excited come spring to see if those color combinations worked. Maybe I've got too much of the same color, I don't know if I've got enough contrast going on, but let's wait and see how these come up and see what kind of arrangements we can make with them. These goddamn mosquitoes, I hate mosquitoes. Yeah, exciting. If you want to follow along and see how all of this does, then remember to hit the subscribe button below, and also let me know, what are you guys growing? I love to grow along with you guys and see how your gardens are doing in contrast with this. And if you want to see what I do with all of my cut flower, then you can check out my Instagram, which is From the Witch's Garden, and there's a link to that below. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.